Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining me tonight for this University of Northampton Doctor of Business Administration webinar. My name is Professor Tim Campbell. I'm a visiting Professor of International Management at the university, and it's my pleasure to take you through this webinar. And what I'd like to do is spend just 15 to 20 minutes just giving you a short presentation about some highlights of the program and the university itself. And then after I finish that, I'll take as many questions as you want to throw my way about the program. And as I say, welcome, and what a fantastic group we've got today too. I can see students from Middle East, Africa, and beyond. So that's really good. Thanks you all for joining me. Let's get going then. Now, before I get on to the DBA program, let me just say a word or two about Northampton and the university itself. On the map that I have here, I've got a great big arrow that points to Northampton. Some of you may have at some stage been to Northampton, but I would imagine most of you probably haven't. But it's an old historic town about 1 hour north of London by train. It's about 100 kilometers. And it's an old historic town, and in Northampton, you used to, just on the outskirts of Northampton, you used to find the University of Northampton, but now you'll find it right in the middle of the town, because the university spent nearly around 500 million US dollars building a brand new campus, which opened just in August. Now I'll just go back to that slide because you can see me there just after it opened, standing in the new campus, and it really is an impressive place and an impressive space. And just a building I want to point out on the campus too is the Senate building, because here you'll find the doctoral research rooms. So see on your right there, I've just taken a picture of the room, and you can't see all of it, but you can see some of it. But that's a space in the Senate building where doctorate students from anywhere around the world, so including all of yourselves, of course, can go onto campus, and you have a space to work anytime you want for as long as you want. So as I say, the new campus has just been finished, and it really is quite a very impressive space. In fact, I was back there again just last weekend for graduation. We had 45 of our MBA students graduating, so that was nice as well. The university itself, on this slide, I've just picked out just a few highlights, really. It's just starting from the top. It was nominated for the Times Higher Education Outstanding Business School of the Year, 3 years in a row. There's over 120 business schools in the UK, and only 6 are nominated each year for Outstanding Business School. So I managed that 3 years in a row, which is a very good achievement. It's also recently been England's #1 university for employability. What that means is it's a percentage of students who graduate the university who either go into employment or into further study. And that percentage has been the highest of any other UK university recently. And it's a good measure of how employers value the degrees from Northampton. It's also recently been the #1 university in the UK for value-added education. That's a measure of teaching quality. It's awarded its Royal Charter, which is very important. You cannot call yourself a British governmental university, and you cannot award degrees without your Royal Charter, which Northampton has, of course. And just the last point I put there, which I think is important, is it's globally recognized. The university is doing a lot of work internationally. So that means the university itself is being recognized around the world, but also there's alumni appearing all around the world as well. So not just is it known in the UK, it's also becoming well known around the world. So that's the university itself. Let me get on to what we're really here to talk about tonight, and that's the DBA program, the Doctorate of Business Administration. The best place to start here is a question I get so often. What is a doctorate? Now, doctorates have actually been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. And when they first came about, somebody did a doctorate as a license to teach in a university. But over the hundreds of years, and as they grew around the world, they've changed and morphed a little bit. But essentially what we have today is two types of doctorates. Both of them are the highest level of degree that you can do, but they both have slightly different focuses. A research doctorate is for people who are primarily engaged in research, and their project will be based on generating new knowledge. What we also have is those who are engaged in a profession, and they want to do the highest level of degree possible. We call them professional doctorates. Now, probably the one that springs to mind for most of you will be medical doctors. Of course, they do an MD. They're not primarily engaged in research. Their day-to-day job is being a medical doctor. So they're in a profession. So what they do is a professional doctorate, an MD. And there's also doctorates in almost every other profession. You can do a doctorate in engineering if you're in the engineering field. You can do a doctorate of pharmacy for pharmacists. You can do a doctorate of education if you're in the education field. And of course, as professional business and management people, our professional doctorate is a doctorate of business administration. So the only difference between the two is the professional doctorates are primarily for people who are engaged in a profession. The research doctorates, more those who are engaged in research. They're both at exactly the same level. They're academically equivalent. And they're both research-based degrees. It's just the outcome, or the focus, as I mentioned, that's different. Professional doctorates will look to do a project that in some way is practical and moves their field along. Research doctorates may well do something that's more theoretical and just generates knowledge. And they do both confer upon the bearer the title of doctor, of course. And, you know, it should, those people who do call themselves doctors technically should be those who have, only those who have a doctorate degree. Although I have come across people where that's not always the case, where some people, such as dentists or veterinarians, may not necessarily have a doctorate degree, but will still call themselves doctor. But we won't quibble about that. Technically, you should have a doctorate degree to be able to use the title doctor. Just to emphasize this point, I like this quote here. I know there's a lot of words on it, and I'm going to read it out, but I just think it makes that difference between the two just nice and easy. Just sums up what I've been saying. So let me just read through this. PhD programs in business focus intensively on preparing candidates to conduct highly specialized scholarly research. They focus on the development of new theory in management, economics, and related fields. Most PhD in business administration graduates lead to careers as university researchers and professors, or as senior researchers in business and government. Okay, so you see what I mean about the research doctorate, the PhD. The professional doctorate, the Doctorate of Business Administration programs, focus on the application of theory rather than on the development of new theory. So something practical comes out of them. While also intended to prepare graduates for academic careers, the Doctorate of Business Administration, by virtue of its focus on the application of theory, has a more practical application and managerial settings than the PhD. So I think that quite nicely summarizes the difference between the two. Professional doctorates are generally for people who will stay in industry, work in the very highest levels of business and management, or as consultants, or something along those lines. Whereas the PhD will be more so geared towards those who want to have research careers and university careers. But that's not exactly the case. I know lots of people who have DBAs who work in universities, and I know lots of people who have PhDs who work in industry. So it's not cut and dry, but I'm sure that just gives you the idea of what the difference is between the two. Let's get on to some topics. So what do some of our Northampton DBA students, what are some of the things that they research? They can be anything business and management. They can be anything from strategy to marketing to corporate social responsibility, innovation, entrepreneurship, ethics, organizational behavior, anything business and management. And then within those fields, they'll dig down to a question that they're interested in. And on this slide, we've got some, let me just pick out some of the topics that people have done. Transformational leadership in a UAE healthcare setting, applying systems thinking in a large construction firm. There's one there about organizational culture, which is looking at the difference between private and public sector firms in Oman, talent management, all sorts of different things. So these topics are anything business and management. How's the program taught? It's a 2+2 model. That means the first 2 years are facilitated modules. They're taught modules. And essentially those 2 years are going to teach you everything you know about how to research and what to research and refining what you're proposing to research. So there's each of these modules, and there's 7 of them, has a 3-day face-to-face workshop attached, and they're spaced about 3 months apart. So you do one at a time, you have the face-to-face workshop, then you'll be supported online by the tutors from Northampton through what we call NILE, which is just a virtual learning environment. And then you'll finish one module and then move on to the next. Then after those 2 years, you're going to be completely ready to do the professional research project or the thesis. And that takes another 2 years. So it's a 2+2 model. The timetable, by the way, the next intake starts in June, and I will have the exact timetable before the end of this week. So I will make sure your academic consultant at Stafford sends you the exact timetable, because these have been done, they've just been finalised, and I'll have the exact dates within the next, as I say, before the end of the week. But the program itself, 2+2 model. 2 years taught, 2 years, you'll then do your thesis. Assessment on the modules themselves, it depends on what you're studying. They use all sorts of different methods. Could be an essay, it could be a report, a presentation, a reflective report, a research proposal, and even on one of them you do a practice viva voce. So it could be anything on those taught modules. The thesis is assessed by a 40,000 word document. And then you defend that with a viva voce. All that simply means is you'll go to Northampton and you'll sit in front of 2 examiners, and they will have read your thesis, obviously, very closely, and you will have to defend it in front of them. Okay, so that's assessment. What about support? There's loads of it. There's the International DBA Program Leader. She's a lady called Dr. Angela Rushton, and you will meet her at the interview stage. When you do your application documents, you'll be interviewed by Angela and then somebody in the area where you're thinking of where your proposal is. There's also a local DBA Program Leader that's taken by myself. I'm here in the United Arab Emirates. Every module rather, has a specialist tutor. When you get to the thesis stage, you have a director of study and 2 supervisors. One will be based at the University of Northampton. One is what we call a local supervisor. And what I mean by that, it doesn't necessarily somebody who lives in the same town as you do. What that means is that person will have experience of the region from where you're studying. There's Northampton and local administration. I talked about the VLE, Northampton Integrated Learning Environment. That's the web-based system where every module has its own site where there's all sorts of materials, all the lecture slides. It's how you communicate with your tutors. Everything is there. And the university itself has an extensive online library. All the materials you'll need, you'll be able to get online. Entry. Fairly standard for a doctorate program is that hold a master's degree in a business-related subject, generally completed within the last 10 years. If it's longer than 10 years, as long as you can show evidence of development, such as doing training courses or something, then that will usually be okay. Have a minimum of 5 years work experience at senior level and be employed in a leadership management role capable of supporting the achievements of the program learning outcomes. As I say, the DBA professional doctorate, it is applied. So you need to be working somewhere in a workplace where you can actually meet the learning outcomes and do the assessments based upon it. The requirements, a CV, a personal statement, which will just discuss your motivations for doing the program, 2 references, degree certificates, and evidence of English language ability. If your master's was in English, then generally that will be fine. Just 2 other things that it's important not to underestimate. Once you put in your application documents, and I'll talk about the bottom one first, you'll also put a proposal together. This is only about 1,000 words, but it's very important to put some thought into this, because that's going to form the basis of your interview. And you'll be interviewed, as I mentioned, by the program leader in Northampton and by an expert in the subject. So if you're thinking of doing finance, for example, it'll be Angela and a finance person. If you're thinking of doing strategy, it'll be a strategy person or whatever. So make sure these proposals, even though they're only 1,000 words, do make sure you put some thought into them. As I say, don't just do them very quickly. Although over those first 2 years on those taught modules, you will go into a lot more depth about research, it's still as important at this stage to really think about what you want to do. And I just put on here, why do we have a proposal at this stage? And there's really 3 things we're looking for. Is the applicant capable of studying at doctoral level? And the doctoral level study is a jump from master's level. So we need to by looking at this document, we need to have at least believe that the person is capable of studying at that level. Does the proposed research fit with the nature of a DBA? So we're looking, does it have a practical outcome? Is it in a business and management related topic? And the other thing we look, does the university have an appropriate supervisor? Now, all major areas of management can be supervised, but if you're thinking of a very technical subject or a very specialist subject, then it's possible that there's not an appropriate supervisor. So my advice, certainly at the proposal stage, is to keep it relatively broad. And then once you're on the program, that's when you can you will start refining it. What do the Northampton team look for in a proposal? Can it make a practical contribution to business and management? Can the applicant reference? And at Northampton, we use the Harvard method. Can they write a brief literature review and cite just a few authors in the field that they're proposing to study? And do they have a basic understanding of research methods? And the good news is that all business and management master's graduates should already know these things and have these skills. Last few things from me. Fees. Total fee for the whole program is US dollars $38,000, excluding VAT, where that's applicable. And I think for this type, remember, this is not an online program, it's a fly-in faculty model, it's a taught DBA program. You're doing exactly the same as the doctorate students do on campus in Northampton. Is reasonable for this level of study. In fact, I think it's very good for this level of study. Why would you do a DBA at Northampton? An investment in your future, both in the academic and professional fields. It's the highest qualification in business and management. Contribute to business and management practice. It will be expected that your thesis will be published. There's international local supervisors and the workshops locally in the UAE from the faculty. My last word, a final word from me. And that's simply that with the DBA program, that completion of the Northampton DBA will set you apart as an expert able to lead and manage at the highest levels. You will have made a unique contribution to your field and developed outstanding analytical, critical, creative, and reflective skills so needed in today's business world. My final word really is doing a doctorate. Very, very few people ever study to doctorate level and ever complete a doctoral level. It's an incredible journey, and actually once you get to the end of it, it's something you'll obviously be extremely proud of personally, and also, of course, professionally, it's going to be a great help to you. All right, I've done pretty well there. 20 minutes. Now's the important bit. Any questions you have, let me know. Now, because I've got quite a lot of you here, the easiest way to do is to use that questions box on the right there. And you type your question, and then I'm going to go through and answer as many as I can. Already I've got a lot. Okay, let's start with Dania. Is it oops, now it's jumped out a bit. Hang on, let me make my box bigger. Here we are. Is it recognized in the UAE? This could be a question wherever you are listening to this webinar around the world. The Doctorate of Business Administration is a fully accredited degree in the United Kingdom by a UK governmental university. Now, is that recognized wherever you are in the world? You must check with your local ministries or education providers or whoever you need to do. The university itself, remember, is a British university, fully accredited by the UK government, but you always check locally if that meets your requirements. If your local ministry, whether you're in the UAE or Oman or you're over in Nigeria, wherever you are, always make sure you check that yourself, that it meets your needs. First, what evidence of English language? Officially, you need an IELTS 7.0. But if you have a master's degree that was done in English, you normally won't need to be, you won't be asked to do that. And often remember, you have the interview and you do the proposal. That will normally be enough for the Northampton team to decide whether you need to look at English or not. So what you do, just submit all the documents. Don't worry about English to begin with. If they want you to do some English language test, they will ask you to do it at a later stage. So you're best just to get the documents in first. Manera is asking for a recording of this webinar. Yes, you can. I know that we do record these, and I'll make sure your academic consultant at Stafford, please do let them know, and they'll show you where to get it from. Oh, here's a question I get a lot. Can I complete the program in less than 4 years? The program is designed to be done in 4 years, and trust me, once you're on the program, you will need those 4 years. So it would be possible to do the first 2 years. That's a set timetable, so you can't do that any faster. But if you're really good, I suppose you could do the thesis stage very quickly, in a year, perhaps a year and a half. But then it would still need to go through the marking and assessment processes, so you wouldn't be far off 4 years anyway. But no, you've really got to think it's going to take 4 years, and trust me, you do need that time. Ferris has asked the same questions. Yeah, no, as I say, you will need the 4 years. If I do not hold a master's degree but have extensive senior management experience, will I be able to apply for the program? Generally, you will need a master's degree to be on the program. But again, these are what we call non-standard entries. I always tell people, if you have a non-standard entry where you don't immediately meet the standard entry requirements, just send your documents to the academic consultant anyway, and they can check with the university. It's always worth a shot to see. Possibly they might give you some what we call EPL, experiential prior learning credits. So check that one with your academic consultant. I'm based in Saudi. Will I be able to meet my local supervisor here in Saudi? No, as I said with the local supervisors, if you're based in Saudi, that person will have experience of the Middle East, but they may not necessarily be living in Saudi. But meeting face-to-face these days, it isn't a massively important thing anyway. You'll meet your supervisors virtually, and generally it works. You'll send drafts to them, they'll comment, and then you'll have a meeting where you'll talk about it. So meeting face-to-face isn't so important these days anyway. For our local supervisors, what's important, they all must have doctorates from UK providers, and they all must, for the local supervisors, they all must have experience either working in the Middle East. So you may find it's somebody in Saudi, but it may not be. But that person will certainly have extensive experience of the Middle East. Daniel's asking, is it possible to pay through installments? Absolutely. Yes, your academic consultant will send you a payment form. What is covered in the UAE workshops, and can I attend any workshops in the UK? Technically, yes, you can. The workshops are exactly the same. Even the same format now, 3-day workshops. The only thing is the timetables are different. So for example, I know the on-campus DBA is starting next month in March, and then ours is starting in June. So although it's technically possible, it's actually more of a matter of timing. So my short answer to that is it's best to stay with your intake here in the UAE, but if you do want to do a module in the UK, we can organise that. And as I said, remember right at the start, there is that space on campus for doctoral students. So if you just want to go over at the thesis stage, spend as much time as you want there and use the offices there, you're welcome to do that as well. Where was I? What is the duration of each module? Face-to-face element is 3 days, and they're each about 3 months long, and then you move on to the next one. Remember, you're doing 7 modules in 2 years, so there's about 3 months apart. After the taught modules are complete, can I do the rest of the program on campus in the UK? Sure, if you wanted to, that would be no problem. What will happen if I miss the compulsory face-to-face workshops? Yeah, now the short answer is try not to, because they are really very important. Very important, the workshops. But if something happens, and it does, for example, you have a health issue, you're ill and simply can't make a workshop, the tutors will do their best to catch you up. So they will run online sessions with you to help you catch up. But as I say, always try your very best to make these workshops because they're a very important part of it. Do I get any credits if I've completed a DBA program from any other university? If you've completed a DBA program, no, you've already got your DBA. So congratulations, Dr. Terence. So you couldn't get any more credits. You will, in effect, have already cashed those in. But probably if you've completed some DBA modules at another university, will you get credit for them? And not usually, because the issue is DBAs are quite different. They differ quite a lot from different universities. Whereas an MBA program, for example, it doesn't really matter which university you go to. You're probably going to study accounting and finance. You're probably going to study strategy. You're probably going to study HR. So it tends to be easier to switch between universities. At doctoral level study, that's much harder because the DBA programs are quite different between universities. So generally, no, we don't really give exemptions on the DBA program. Can I have a list of topics that the university can supervise? You can have, basically it's anything in business and management, the supervisors will be able to do any of the main things. As I mentioned, it's only something fairly technical that they wouldn't be able to do. And if you want to have a look at the local supervisors, by the way, have a look on the Stafford website under and then find the Our Team tab. And then under there, you'll find academics, and you'll find a selection of the local supervisors in there. So that'll give you an idea of where they're from and their research interests. But basically, anything in business management, there's a lot of academics at the university. Any age limit to undertake the course? Absolutely not. No. We have all ages on the course, and we have some retired people on the course at the moment. Who are very much doing it for their own personal development, and it's fantastic to see. So any at all. Yusuf saying, can the installments be divided into 4 years? Yes, you can pay monthly or quarterly per year. Is attendance mandatory? Could it be fully distance learning? Yes, this program attendance is mandatory. You need to make those workshops. As I say, it's a taught program, not an online program. I mentioned, okay, if you miss 1 or 2 workshops because of health or whatever, the tutors will do their best to catch up, but they are essentially mandatory. Do we receive any additional study materials such as textbooks, etc.? At doctoral level, if you need any textbooks, they're on the online library. There's in the ebook section. But at doctoral level, most of what you'll be looking at will be journal articles and research articles. All that's available through the online library. Will my degree state online distance learning? No, it won't. It's not an online degree. It'll be exactly the same degree. It's a part-time degree and will be exactly the same as you'd get if you studied on campus. What is the maximum period to complete the course? Is 6 years. Manera is saying, what did you mean when you said that we have 3 days face-to-face? What I meant by that, Manera, every module has a 3-day face-to-face workshop here in the UAE, okay? But the whole module takes about 3 months. So after that 3-day face-to-face workshop with the Northampton professor, you'll then complete the module through doing various activities online. Dania, is the total fees, as I heard, $38,000? Absolutely correct. Ian's asking, is there a sample of the 2-year coursework to review? Oh, that's a good question. I've not had that before. Not that I'm aware of. And I would think it unlikely because I wonder if you're meaning student assignments, because of course student assignments can't be shown to anyone apart from the university tutors. So I don't think so in on that one. I wouldn't, yeah. But if you wanted more information about what happens in each of those modules, have a look on the university website and it gives you a short overview of what each module is. And I'll give you my email address at the end. I can send you the program handbook if you like, and that gives you a bit more detail as to what those modules cover. Daniel's saying, how many visits do you have to do to the UK? Absolutely none if you don't want to. All the workshops are held here. Oh, with one exception. Of course, your very final, your viva voce for your thesis, right at the end of the program, that you need to do on campus in the UK. Sometimes we're going to be asked about the possible contribution the research will make. Yes, the research is concerned with problem solving. How could we answer about the contribution to knowledge and theory? The contribution for a DBA has to be something practical. So if it could, you're saying the research is concerned with problem solving. Most research is, Sufyan, in some way, but think of what the outcome of that is. What happens if we actually solve that problem? How would that impact business and management practice? So it can be, so the study itself will certainly have plenty of theory in it, but it's the contribution as the outcome. How will this actually impact business and management practice? Any additional expenses beside the fees? No, there's not. Only if you don't live in the UAE, of course, you'll need your flights and accommodation to get here. Firaz is saying, can you please send us the presentation? Yes, I'll make sure that's sent to everybody tomorrow. Oh, Langoy is saying, my interest is in business and environment management. Is that okay to apply? Absolutely. Environmental management is a very contemporary topic at the moment. Yeah, that would be interesting. Right. Oda, this sounds like I think I know this, Oda. I'm looking to get a doctorate degree in HR management. I know I can specialize in a subject for my doctorate of BA, but it's better to study a doctorate in social sciences and HR. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, at Stafford also there's the list, there's another professional doctorate list called the Doctorate of Social Science. That is very much geared to people and HR. So if that is really the area you want to look at, but as I, just bear in mind, it's a very specialized thing and you're always going to be rather specialized into that area. With the DBA program, it's more general. So although you'll be specializing in your research degree, you'll find if you want to move into other areas, you want to do other things, it'll be easier for you to do that. So the DSOC side, the Doctor of Social Science, okay, if you're absolutely keen on HR and people issues. Other than that, for general business and management, the DBA is the better choice. As my field is too in my field is too confidential, so the practical information is difficult to provide. What is your advice? Yeah, that's okay, and that's very common. Most organizations do not want even their own employees being particularly aware of the sorts of information that they have. So it will always be treated confidentially, and there will always be something you can use within the organization. So that's generally not a problem, because that's an issue that most people will find. So there will be ways around that. Impact of knowledge of audit firms. Oh, Stephen's given me a topic here. Impact of knowledge of audit firms to investment evaluation techniques on the validity of feasibility studies. Wow, take me a while to get my head around that, Sufyan. Impact of knowledge of audit firms, okay, to investment evaluation techniques on the validity of feasibility studies. All right, I'd need to see a bit more about that, but that sounds fine to me. It sounds like the important thing is that it fits within a business and management topic, and I can very much see that as a financial type, a finance topic. So yeah, I would think it wouldn't be a problem with that. Ian's saying they just mentioned if you can't make the 3-day workshop for some reason. Yes, as I mentioned, the tutors will do their very best to catch you up. Can the university assist me in getting a student visa in case you want to come and use the facilities? They'll certainly write you a letter. That will be no problem. That you're a student of the university and that you'll be coming to use the facilities. They can certainly write a letter without a problem. Oh, thank you, Abdul Rahman. This is one of our MBA graduates that I saw last week. He's got a question. Do they get 20% off the fees for for Northampton graduates? To be honest, Abdul Rahman, I'm not entirely sure. I'm going to have to get your academic consultant to get back to you on that, or just drop me an email tomorrow and I'll check for you. Sophie is saying the study is going to be conducted as a cross-sectional correlation design. That's okay. The best thing to do, Sophie, get this down into your proposal. And all the proposals that you send in, I have a look at. So get your ideas down onto that proposal form, and it's easier for me to spend a bit of time having a think about what you're doing and how you're going to go about it. I've got a question here about finishing 4 modules at another business school. Is there any chance to have less modules? As I said, not really, because they just don't match. What we do in Northampton DBA program can be very different to what you do in another DBA program. So you really need to start, and also the modules tend to build on each other. So you've got to think about that, the 4 modules that you've done at your other business school, that's going to give you some knowledge already, and that's going to be useful to you as you go back onto the Northampton program. But I can't see you being exempted from modules. Yes, so Saad's saying, as I know for the PhD research, it should be new to science and knowledge and never studied before. What about the DBA research? Is the same concept of new research will be applied? Very much. The DBA is all about, you don't need to come up with a new theory. What you need to come up with is a new way of something that improves business and management practice. So something actually practical. So for example, you've probably all heard of Maslow's theory of motivation. Well, a PhD project for Maslow, although it wasn't, but it could have been, was to come up with that theory. A DBA project could be using that theory to find out about motivation motivation of university professors in the UAE or something like that. So you're using something that's already there, but you're finding out something practical. Then the results of your study could actually tell us something about motivation of all university professors in any university. So you see what I mean? You need to come up with something practical, whereas PhD may just be purely theoretical. Well, we do have a lot of questions. You're doing very well here. Where was I? We've got a question here about if you wanted to transfer to the university, would they provide student visas? I don't, but they certainly provide letters of introduction. I'm not sure about visas, to be entirely honest with you, or how that works at the University of Northampton. Send me an email and I can check with the university and find out for you exactly what would happen in that case. Mamdou saying, are we going to have a schedule of workshops? Yes, I will have it before the end of this week, and I will get to the academic consultants to send it to you. Yusuf saying, is the topic should be related to my work? Well, that's a good question, because the majority of DBA students will do it on their own workplace, but it doesn't have to be. It can be on other workplaces. You can use your networks, and it can be an industry-wide study. It can be on the context itself. No, it doesn't have to be on your workplace. But you need to think about collecting data. For example, if you thought, I've got a really good topic and I'm going to do it on Google. Your problem is, how are you ever going to get some useful information out of Google? It would be difficult. When you do your own workplace, it's generally much easier. However, as I said, you could use networks, or you might be using databases, or in some way, as long as you can collect the data, you can do it on anything you like. What is the time limit to register for the upcoming program? Do it as soon as you can, because it does take time to process the application documents. Then at the university, they need to set up the interview. And as I mentioned, they have to get Angela and an expert in the field and get them together and arrange with yourself. It all takes time. So my advice, get those documents in as soon as you can. Fatima saying, I work as a strategy and performance improvement in a hospital. Can this DBA help me? Yeah, you better can. That's a very very interesting topic that you could do if you wanted to actually work, if you wanted to do those topics that you're working in now, and you would learn a lot more about them by doing the DBA program. And so that's certainly going to help you professionally, either in this industry or in another industry or into consultancy or training or whatever it might be. So yeah, that's very business and management orientated, so it certainly would. Oh, Dani is saying, please can you repeat how many visits we have to do to the campus as the connection dropped? And you couldn't hear my answer. Here we are. First, what are the most required areas to study in healthcare management? You could do anything in healthcare management. You could look at strategy, you could look at the people issues. Again, healthcare management is there's a lot done in this area because it's such an important industry, of course. So there's all sorts of ways of tackling this. A good way to think about it is think of your own experiences. What are real issues that you deal with or that you see where you work or in your industry? You know, often it's it's always, in fact, the applicant or the student who tends to come up with the best topics because they're working in the field. You guys are working in it day to day in this industry. And you can often think of, well, this is a real problem here that needs to be addressed. So think of that. Think of a real problem something that that's being dealt with, that's being discussed in your industry and dealt with. Christian, Dan is saying, when can I join the program? Get those applications in as soon as you can, Dan. And then it'd be great to see you in the June intake, in the very first workshop in June. Ian saying a comparative studies comment on the DBA. You bet, you'll find all sorts of different methodologies. I did my MBA in 2006. Do you think I'd be accepted on the DBA? I'm sure that'd be fine, Mamdu. That's not much less than 10 years. And if you can show just that you've been on some training courses in the meantime, that would usually be fine. What's Sufyan saying here? The method design will be a correctional one. Hard for me to say with that, Sufyan. You'd be best to send me your proposal when you get a draft done. I can have a look for you. Could we have any network with current DBA students? Yeah, ask your academic consultant at Stafford if they can, because we can't obviously just give you the names, we'd have to ask their permission. But if you ask your academic consultant at Stafford, then they can contact them and ask if it's okay for you to contact them. And what if students couldn't pass on the module? Yes, you must pass all the modules. So if you don't pass the first time, you will automatically be allowed to resubmit the assignment that you failed in. But you must eventually pass your modules. What else have I got here? I'm saying he's got an MBA from the University of Northampton. Fantastic stuff. Yes, you can certainly register on the DBA. There is an application fee, Dan is asking, but that will obviously come off the total course fees. And if you weren't successful in being admitted onto the program, you get the application fee back. How many people do we take a year for this program? There's normally about between 10 to 15 per intake, and we have 2 intakes per year. Last couple of questions, I think. Yusuf asking, what other difficulties may we face rather than time management? Well, you're right, time management is the #1 thing. It's hard to say. It depends on the student. It really does. As I say, do remember, it is a step up from an MBA, from a master's level program. So as long as you've done well in your master's level degree, you should be fine to get on. And as long as you've got the tenacity and as long as you've got the time management skills, there should be no reason why you can't complete the doctorate. But you'll face the usual difficulties of balancing your work life and your family life and everything else. But every other student's in the same boat. They'll all be doing the same things. There's no exams, Yusuf? No. Mohammed, how many modules in the DBA program? There's 7 in the first 2 years, and the second 2 years is a thesis. Fatima's asking, what are the first steps now? Fatima, your academic consultant at Stafford will have all the information about how to apply, fees and everything, and I'm sure they will be in touch with you very soon, and they can organise everything and get it all processed with the university. Mohammed's saying about slides for the presentation. Yep, I'll make sure they're sent to everybody tomorrow. Sufyan's asking, means that all students were able to, I think you mean, that's okay, that's a good question. How many students who start actually finish the program? Oh, that's a tough one. Of course, not everybody finishes, and I wish, because we started our first intake over here, hasn't gotten to the end yet. They're 2.5 years in now, our very first intake, and I can tell you we've got about 80% of them left, so that's pretty good at that stage. So it will differ between intakes about how many actually finish the program in the end. So the majority do. I suppose that's the best I can say, because as I say, we haven't had an intake that's gone through to completion yet, so I can't give you an exact figure. But that would be, I would say between 60 to 80% would be an educated guess. I'm saying information systems, audit control, security domains considered a research topic. Information systems certainly is. Yep, no problem with that. I think I've done it. I think I managed to get all of those questions done. But if I did miss yours, let me go to the next slide. Just give me an email. Absolutely welcome to do so. If you've got a question or you've got an idea for a topic, but you're not entirely sure about it, that tends to be the easiest way. You can give me a bit more information. I can generally tell you if it's on the right track or not. So I really, so thanks so much for listening, everybody. Great to have such a nice big group of you. I really hope I'll see you face to face at the workshop in June. As I mentioned, any questions about the program that you want me to answer, just send me an email or give me a call, and then do be in touch with your academic consultant at Stafford, who will take you every step of the way through the application process. Okay, guys, thanks so much for listening. Bye for now.